Hey guys, it's Miss Tracie, and this week for family worship we get to stay in Matthew chapter 14. Last week, you might remember, Jesus did an amazing miracle. He fed over 5,000 people with just 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Well, right after that, it was getting late, and Jesus sent the disciples back across the Sea of Galilee to go back to the other side. And Jesus went by himself to pray. Now think about that for just a second. If the Son of God needed to be alone and pray to the Father, how much more do you and I need to find time every day to do that? A lot, right? So I just want to encourage you, find time every day to be by yourself and to talk to God. We don't know what Jesus was talking about, but we do know that the time where he would be crucified on the cross was getting very close. So maybe he was talking to God about that. But while the disciples were in the boat making their way, the winds were very bad. And I'm sure, even though the Bible doesn't tell us, that it was probably uncomfortable and maybe they were afraid. So in the very early morning hours, probably about 3 a.m., when you and I are asleep, hopefully, Jesus came walking out on the water. And when the disciples saw him, the Bible says they were terrified. They thought, it must be a ghost, because they had never seen anybody walk on top of the water before. But when Jesus came closer, they recognized him. And Peter, one of the disciples, Peter, cried out, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." See, Peter had seen Jesus do amazing miracles like feeding that crowd. So he knew if it was Jesus, he was powerful enough to do anything. So Jesus called him, and Peter got out of the boat and started to walk on the water. And all was well at first until Peter started to notice the wind and the waves. And as he saw how rough it was, he began to sink. See, boys and girls, when he was looking at Jesus and trusting Jesus, he was able to walk on the water. But when he looked at all the things around him and all of his circumstances and how scary it was, he began to sink. But then Peter did something very, very wise. He cried out, "Jesus, save me." See, Peter knew that only Jesus could save him. In that instance, he could have maybe yelled back at the boat, "Hey guys, throw me a rope." Or he could have tried to swim really, really well back to the boat. But Peter didn't do that. He cried out to Jesus. And that's the same way we want to be. When you face things that are scary or you feel afraid, I want you to remember, before you try to fix it on your own or run to other people for help, cry out to Jesus. Not only can he save us from sin and death, he is also the one who cares about our lives and wants to help us when we are afraid. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
Jesus had been teaching crowds of people by the Sea of Galilee. It was getting late, so he told his disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side of the sea. Jesus sent the crowds away and went up on the mountain to pray by himself. That evening, the boat was far from the shore. The wind blew and the waves tossed the boat around. Jesus was still on the mountain, alone. Around 3 a.m, Jesus came toward his disciples walking on the sea. When the disciples saw Jesus, they were terrified. "It's a ghost!" they cried. Right away, Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage, "It's me. Do not be afraid." Peter answered, "Lord, if it really is you, tell me to come to you on the water." So Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water toward Jesus. But when Peter saw how strongly the wind was blowing, he was afraid. Peter began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried. Jesus reached out his hand and grabbed Peter. Jesus said, "You have little faith. Why do you doubt?" They got into the boat and the wind stopped. Then everyone in the boat worshiped Jesus and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Jesus proved that he can be trusted. His miracles, teaching, death, and resurrection showed that he is who he says he is. Only Jesus can save us when we look to him in faith.